Hey, Exponential fam, this is Dalton.
I'm Andy.
And I'm Mark.
We are going to be continuing our series called The Drawing Board, where we talk all about digital ministry. This is episode 3, which means we have 2 awesome episodes that came before this, where we are talking about all kinds of things.
They were awesome. Go check them out.
They were awesome. You should check them out. Last episode, we talked about the sacraments with Mark, and it was beautiful. He talked all about just communion and baptism and things like that, and how we do that in digital context. Once again, if you didn't check that out, you're going to want to check it out. You can do that on the YouTube channel for Exponential. Make sure you subscribe, like, and all those things here to check out all the future videos. But today, we're going to specifically talk about something I'm really excited about, and that's community.
Okay, so when you think of community in a digital context, and we kind of talked about this in the intro episode, a lot of people hear the word community and then you just go, okay, I went to YouTube and I commented on a video.
They confuse community and engagement, right?
And not only that, they confuse community and posting, or community and a thumbs up, or community and a heart. And the church is pretty clear. I think the Bible's pretty clear, especially in, there's this book of Hebrews, maybe you've heard of it. And in there it says, we shouldn't give up meeting together. How is it meeting online is fulfilling that command to not give up meeting together? Aren't we breaking a rule if we're like just connecting in ones and zeros over voice calls and video chats and things like that? How do we actually do that?
Love it. So my job at Lutz actually is community and discipleship. And there was something kind of before my time at Lutz that I realized is I spent a lot of time with people online in community. And community is something that can be biblical, but it also could be just hanging out together around something shared, a passion, all of those things. But what we're talking about today is really this concept / the truth about biblical community, that it's different than normal community. And the way you do that online is, I believe, by being intentional with the gospel. So going into these moments and being intentional with how we talk to people and how we go about things and building relationships in that manner. So one of the ways that I've seen Lux do that is by connecting with people through our passions for Jesus and setting, we like to say, tables at Lux for people to connect to what our digital ministry is doing, then taking it to the next step of talking about Jesus and taking them on their faith journey or path.
Yeah, well, I think that, the idea that you can meet online, we talked in the very first video of this series, like the staggering number of people in Gen Z that are actually going online for community. Like that's the reason that they're jumping on the internet. It's like something 70% of Gen Z connect online. Like they're going there for community. That's what they want.
And I think in Gen Z, they understand innately that you can have online community. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, maybe it's because it's a digital native thing. I'm not actually sure, but like you're a little bit younger than us. Like we're not super ancient yet, but Dalton's a little bit younger than us. And yet he understands that innately, I think, like we do. And I think if you have kids out there, they understand innately that they pick up their phone or they pick up an iPad and that's an actual person they're talking to, right?
Yeah, we just moved halfway across the country from Atlanta to Wichita, Kansas. And my son hasn't missed a beat hanging out with his friends online through Fortnite, which is a popular game. What I see in the next generation, and even just being a millennial on the younger side of millennials, is this consistency with their friendships, being online, sharing things, caring things. There's not this difference in persona of who they are off and on. They're very much the same person from what I'm seeing. And the cool thing is the church, I think, has an awesome opportunity to step into that as digital natives or someone trying to reach digital natives and speak the gospel into that with being intentional in building relationships and things like that, which creates awesome community.
Yeah, so the premise is that, right? This is what people are looking for. If you look at any stats, especially like the platform that we're on is Twitch. And one of the things that was really compelling to me early on was seeing that the most watched category on Twitch, the millions of people that are watching, the most watched category was not a video game, which is a live streaming platform for video games. It was just chatting, seeing 400,000 or 500,000 people watching it 24/7, 365 days a year. And I said, these people aren't looking for gaming. They're looking for community. They're looking for connection. They're looking for truth. So here's the thing, right? If the next generation, I think young millennials and down, are looking to the internet for connection, community, and truth, they're hungry for it. The church hasn't yet built the framework for them to find it. So they're finding it. They're just finding it in other places, and they're receiving other worldviews. Because like the fact that we don't think community can happen does not change the fact that it is happening. And it doesn't change the fact that that's where the emerging generations are going primarily to find their sense of community, as other third spots like the mall, like wherever, has been eliminated. And we have very few agreed upon places to gather, to connect, and to build community in. So they're going to online anyway, whether you want them to or not. That's where they're finding connection. So Dalton, give us some, as the community discipleship pastor at Lutz, can you give us just some really practical nuts and bolts of like, how can we build frameworks where people can find a spot to connect, to find truth, and to build community in our digital presence as a church?
Love it. So if you want to build intentional community, I think it starts first with having a burden for the people you're trying to reach. I think that's a given. But I think past that then is learning how to connect with those people, whether you speak their language or not. If God has placed a burden on your heart, I think it's important for you to learn the language of the people. We do that very much in our space, being on Twitch. We are nerds ourselves. We speak the things in the language of our people. Now, we don't claim to be experts, and neither should you in this space when you're looking to connect with people, but you need to care for those people. I think connecting with somebody is the important part of starting to build community. After that, I think you can look at several different things. Time is something that I think when you look at building a digital ministry of some sort or stepping into it in a greater sense at your church, wherever you're at, whatever your context is, I think time is something that we often overlook. We ask the questions of, well, how much does it cost for a mic or a camera or things like that? In reality, it's not very much compared to other church planning options or anything like that, starting a ministry. But time is something that you really have to count the cost. All of us have spent so much time with people, and time through Logitech cameras and time through really crappy microphones at times, but God can use all of those things. And we've seen the Holy Spirit work through the wires online to reach people states away, countries away, because we've spent time with them and we showed, hey, we care. After that, I think a big part of building practical community is inviting others. Here's the reality. There's 3 guys up here who have a combined probably 30 years of ministry, but we can't do this alone. We need other people. And one reason I've seen us be so successful in our community building is because we've had so many people that have a burden for the people around them online, and they're intentional with what they do. They are willing to spend time just like us, and they're not paid. They're people that just care about Jesus and care about the person on the camera apart from them. So I think inviting others into that is really awesome. And I've used this word a lot, intentional. We use it everywhere in the church, but I don't want to dismiss. I think that's kind of the last thing that you need for community. The last part of the recipe is that you have to remember that it's not just about the game. It's not just about the topic. It's not just about all of these things. It's about really caring for the person across from you digitally and saying, you know what, today I'm going to love them and serve them the way that Jesus came and loved and served, and I'm going to point them to the hope we have in him.
I think we've talked a lot at Lux about people being more than just a screen name and a profile picture. Yep. They have a story. They're being impacted. Like their spiritual story started before they came to us. It'll go well beyond when they're not at Lux anymore. But like we get a chance to play a role and a part in that portion of their spiritual journey. And we don't get to do that if they're just an engagement number, if they're just a viewer number. We get to do that when we hear their stories and we make space. I love this idea of inviting them in. Dalton, talk for just a moment around table setters at our church and small groups at our church. I think those are the 2 primary vehicles. And I think if you're leading a physical church and you're trying to figure out, well, how do I actually cultivate and put structures in place for these type of communities? What does that look like? Talk just a little bit about the table setters and the small group leaders at our church.
Yeah, so I think whether you use the terminology or not, we all understand the table and the importance of it in our house, right? We understand that tables are places for great conversation. I mean, the old youth pastor adage is basically like, hey, invite somebody to your lunch table, right? I said that for years. Tables make differences. And when we invite our volunteers to be table setters, what we're really asking them is, hey, connect with people with something that you understand and that you like in order for you to be able to connect connect, have conversations about Jesus, and take them on this faith journey. In that, our small group leaders, our table setters, really, truthfully, all they are is living out the book of Corinthians. They're ambassadors for Christ in their space. They're ambassadors at that table, not just to talk about passions of sports and movies and whatever it is, but to tell them like, hey, you know what? I care about you. We're going to connect on this thing, whether it's, World of Warcraft or whatever it is, but we're going to talk about these things. And I'm going to ask you, dude, how's your marriage? Like, how's your kids? Like, what's God doing in your life at work? And then as they build relationships, they see authentic care for them. They're going to start taking it deeper and deeper.
When we think about actual physical churches right now, a lot of times I think with digital, it's easy to look at. So you just referenced World of Warcraft there. Yeah. It's really easy to say like, hey, we're playing an online video game together. Mm-hmm. How do you do that with people that are, men's groups or women's groups or things like that? Like what would be some practical tips for churches that are trying to really land the plane with community online without that shared sense of like, hey, we're playing a video game together or doing something like that together?
No, I love that. So we have several small groups at Lutz that meet on nothing like games or anything. And if anything, almost everyone in the group really doesn't have a shared connection in that way outside of Jesus and wanting to grow with them. So if we're going to think of, especially like a really spiritual context of like a small group, I'll use my marriage group as a example of this. So my wife and I, Emily, started a marriage group here at Lutz where we've been meeting and talking and pouring into marriages. And these are relationships that are all over our country. But what we're seeing is this connection of like, we all want to be a better spouse and we all want something at the end of the day. And we ultimately, what that is I want to look at my spouse. I want to care for them more. I want to love them more. And ultimately I want to love them the way Jesus wants me to love them. And the cool thing is like these relationships are so different from each other. I mean, we have people that are brand new in their marriage in Georgia. We have people that have been really married for a long time in Kansas. Like we have all these things, but we all come together around this shared moment. That's really the beauty of connection online, is like figuring out what do you share in common. It doesn't have to be a hobby, a passion, something like that. But what do you share and how do you use that to point people to Jesus?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who are probably inside your church who don't share a love for gaming like a lot of people in our church do, but they need an online small group. There's a lot of people in your church that need an online small group. And whether that's because they have young kids and your church isn't providing childcare and they just feel like small groups are outside of their reach, or they work until 7 or 8 o'clock at night and so they can't make it, get home, shower, eat, clean up, and make it to a small group. But if a small group started at 8:30 or 9 p.m. after the kids were asleep and they just had to get on their computer, they would be glad to. They're already looking to online places for a sense of community already, and a lot of times the church just is not opening up any opportunities. We went to Zoom during the pandemic, and then afterwards, like, oh, thank goodness we can get back inside of people's homes. And there's a whole group of people that feel very stranded by that in a lot of churches, who are like, the only way that I could have gone and been part of a community and got to know anybody at this church outside of Sunday morning was if there was Zoom call small groups and there was online options for me. There are people who are shut-ins inside of our churches who don't have the ability to be able to make it to somebody else's house, and maybe in their environment they can't actually host a small group inside of their home. I think that these tables that we're talking about being set, online small groups and digital tables, are central for any church, no matter what type of digital ministry you're going to have, because there are people in your church that want to be connected to community, want to be connected to your church, that cannot if the only opportunities are exclusively physical ones.
And we're not even talking about just normal like table setting like that. I mean, we do co-working at our church, which is basically a time during the day where anyone could come in and hang out and talk. And what I find is our church is predominantly very neurodivergent. So we have a lot of people that struggle just in day-to-day relationships outside of their home. And they're very open about this. But some reason, man, God is using online spaces to give them just a comfortability that they could get over that hump to be able to open their life up to somebody else to pour into them, which I think is super neat.
Yeah. Well, that's going to land the plane for this video. Want to thank you guys for coming and joining us throughout this series called The Drawing Board, as we're going back to the drawing board and talking about what does the church look like and how can the church look in digital space. This conversation with Pastor Dalton in the hot seat.
Let's go.
Talking about community. I hope it's been really helpful for you. Let us know in the comments below if there's been an aha moment for you or something that's just like really, stuck with you. If you want to talk to us more about this, don't hesitate to reach out to us directly at connect@lux, Lux, digitalchurch.com. If you want to talk a little bit deeper about this, you can get a hold of us directly through that. But you can also tune into a lot of the other resources, blogs, podcasts, and pieces of content from Exponential right here on YouTube or over on our website. Just Google Exponential and jump over and grab the link in the description of this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching and growing along with us throughout this series. We're going to be jumping back in for the next video here pretty soon, where Pastor Andy's going to be in the hot seat. We're going to be talking about worship, which is another one, like, man, everyone thinks that worship sucks online. We're going to talk about that.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's what come on now. We all during the pandemic, we're like, man, this sucks. We're going to talk about that. How do we make worship not suck again? We're going to talk about that. How do we do that in an online space and do it well? Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next video.